Hey gun people, got a couple questions on how to clean the revolver, whether they're simple or easy. I think they're a lot easier to clean because you don't have as much to take down. I'm not going to pull down. I guess I could pull down this plate. First of all, anytime you do a good cleaning on a gun, you want to make sure and take off your grips. And it's usually only one screw, maybe it's one screw on each side. You take it off. When working with gun screws, always really critical, I've learned over the years, make sure you reverse screw before you put a screw back in. So I've already taken this screw out and it's unscrewed, but when I put this back in, I'm not going to go righty-tighty right away. I'm going to go lefty-loosey till I hear a click, and that little click means it's seated. Then I'm going to go as soon as I hear that click the other way. That way you don't end up cross-threading your screws. Real important when working with weapons and doing these things. So take the grips off. It's going to give you an internal. Now I could take this plate off here. I'm not sure if I ever have. You know what? What the hell? I'm doing a video. I might as well just take the damn thing off. A lot of times they'll put Loctite on these so it doesn't come undone. A lot of manufacturers don't recommend you take this side plate off because there's pieces and parts in here that'll come out, and if you're not familiar with them, a lot of times I will also use a little magnetic pan for my screws so I know where they are, as long as you don't connect the gun to it. That way I know where my screws are at, and I'll set those over here. So this one, a lot of Smiths have 3 screws. They have one here, and one here. I don't think you need to take this plate off. You can tell where this grip was when I take this grip off. There's a little bit of rust starting to come out there. Well, I should use a clear patch. Let me use a clear patch so you can see the rust. Even though this is stainless steel, right underneath that grip there was a little rust. You can tell on the rag it's got that little tinge. So when people don't pull off the grips, and I also, when I take my grips off, I usually always spray them down with a little oil to make sure there's nothing on there, because my fingerprints and oil will get on the grip, and people will put grips back and they put oil in there. So I'll always spray a little oil, wipe them off real good, make sure I wipe my screw off, and then when I put it down, I make sure not to touch the inside, because once you put those grips on, they don't come off too often. So you want oil on both sides. But anyway, let me get finished on this second little screw here. And again, this is a little bit more detailed than I would recommend to most people, because taking these screws off, it's pretty easy to strip them if they're tight, like this one appears to be. Maybe I won't take it off because I don't want to Alright, I got it. These little screws are very easily, that's a pretty long little screw. So I'll put that on one side of my pan to make sure I know it goes on the back. And then to take this off, a lot of times you have to get some sort of flathead screwdriver or something because they're pretty tight, and kind of pry it off. But you want to make sure you don't make some spring pop out, because there's springs underneath here that'll come out. Okay, so by taking this internal out, it gives me access. See if I can zoom in more on that little trigger there. Kind of see what's going on. I'll just try to stay on that one if I can keep that in there. So when I open this up, you notice, and again I've already cleared this, but you notice when I'm pressing this right here, move over here. I don't have the light when I move over there. Look right there. And you see that little piece. What that does on a revolver, when you press this in, and what I'm doing, shit, I just lost my damn. I'll have to look back at the video and see how that sucker came out. I'm pretty sure it came out one of these 2 ways. But anyway, and that's the problem with taking this out, is springs come out. I meant to look at it real good and I was concentrating on damn getting it fitted. But anyway, if I press on this to open the cylinder, you notice right here there's a little bitty thing that's going in and out right there. what that is pushing on is on the inside of this. When you press this lever, I'm going to pull this off here, and then I'll show you how I got to that. When you press this lever, you have this button over here, which pushes that. But there's also a little spring right there on that little tip. So this little tip goes in and out. And that is what's getting pressed when I push on the inside of that revolver in here. And I guess I'm not... Oh, I think I have to push this down maybe. Yeah, well, hopefully nothing else fell out of this damn thing. I don't know where the hell that came from. Shit! Damn videos. So anyway, let me put this back in here to show you how to take this out. So when you pull, normally what I do for revolvers, I don't pull this side piece out because of all these little pieces, and that's kind of why I just don't do it. But I've never had this one off, and I figured, what the hell, it looks a little dirty underneath here. I figured I'd spray it down and clean it anyway. The springs look almost new. They look clean. This looks clean. Everything looks pretty clean in here. And when I pull this trigger here, you notice the internal trigger. As I pull this, it spins the cylinder and it drops the hammer. So this is also your hammer, and it also spins the cylinder. So my trigger's not going back. So this spring right here is supposed to be here, and I think that's what pushes my trigger back, because there's no pressure to push that back. So as I pull this trigger, spins the cylinder and fires the round, and then this should be popping down and clicking. And that's probably why, yeah, see, that's why this wasn't having any spring tension, because that wasn't set. But anyway, I'm just going to get to cleaning. So all these internals in here, what I will probably do is just give a good dash of oil in here, take a Q-tip, and really get in here and make sure there's no pieces. Again, when you're doing this, if a spring pops out and you don't take a picture or you don't do a video, you're not going to know where things were when it comes apart. Now you can go online and Google this gun and put schematic under Google Images. When you go to Google, there's a little tab up top that goes Images, and put Google Images, then put schematic for, what is this? 38 Special Tars. And I'll have a schematic on where everything's at. So I'm going to get all my little pieces in here. Again, this is probably the cleaning I'm doing here. I may do, if I'm putting a gun in the safe for a long time, I'll do this type of cleaning. But most of my revolvers, I've never taken this plate off. Now people are talking about polishing the triggers, cutting these springs down. If I cut this spring down, it'll make the trigger easier. There's different things you can do to work on a trigger on a gun. Again, it's all mechanics. It's going to go back together. I mean, as long as you don't lose a piece, you should be okay. So, now that little screw that you saw me take off right here on this plate, here, the first screw I took off, that screw is the one that holds in your cylinder. And I usually do take that off. And once you take that screw off, I don't need to take this plate off. Once you take that screw off, and I can show you probably in this gun, I put my gun in a plastic bag because it was sitting, one of my guns was sitting out that I have in the garage, hidden in there. And when I took it out to clean, I noticed there's a little surface rust. So I went, you know what, I'm going to put this in a Ziploc. I cleaned it, wiped it down, and because it's in a Ziploc, I still think I can go ahead and pull it. I didn't try it because it was loaded, but I guess I can unload it. Put it back in here. Zip it closed. Just zoom out a little bit here. So now, when I keep this gun, it keeps the moisture, temperature, and all the other crap. But then if I need to shoot it and pull the trigger, if I grab this, I can reach through this plastic and go ahead and pull that trigger. Now it's going to poke a hole in the bag, but I'm going to be using it, so it won't matter. But if I need to, I can just puncture this gun and fire it, but yet it stays clean, and then I'll just open it up, and then I'm sure I'll get a little bit of melting here on the first round, maybe some melting here, and I'll have to do a good cleaning. But it'll keep my gun clean and from the moisture and elements if you're keeping a gun out in the open somewhere. It's just an idea. And I haven't done this for a year yet, so I'm going to put a gun in a plastic bag for the winter, put it out there, probably label it, and then I'll wait another year on another bag and see if it rusts inside this plastic, if all the moisture in there. But I think if I wipe it down and oil it good, I don't think it will. Now, most of your guns that you come with have that wax paper, and that wax paper tends to breathe, and it's in a cardboard box. So making something where it can't breathe usually isn't good and may end up enhancing rust. I'll know after a while because I'll do it. But if you notice on this gun right here, it's got that same little center screw right there. So I'm going to take that one little center screw off just to show you on this gun. So you take this screw off. Now this is also considered a tension screw. So if you put it back either too tight or not the right way, your cylinder, when you open it, it'll get stiff. And sometimes I'll open a gun at a pawn shop and it's really stiff. And if they don't know what they're doing, they think the gun's kind of broke. So they'll lower the price, when really all they have to do is release this tension screw a little bit, maybe do some polishing on it, and it'll make it to where it flops open nice and easy. So when I take that screw off, that allows this cylinder to come right out and slide off. So it sets right back in here. And now that I know it's in correctly, I can put my screw back in. You always want to close it. Never put the screw back in while it's open because it's not lined up. So you put it in, you line it up, you put your screw back in. You want to take it out, you take the screw off, you press the release, you open it, and you pull this out. And inside this little tube here, people rarely clean. And I like to get a nice clean area in there and make sure there's no rust or anything. So I got a nice clean Q-tip, and I'm going to go in here and just run that around. And you can tell that I've got some little bit of dirt, maybe a little bit of rust building up in there. So I'm going to go ahead and squirt that out and clean it. Give it a good polish. And again, if you never pull this out, which most people don't, you're never going to know how dirty it is in there. I don't know if you can see that better there or there. So, and then of course, when you have this out, this little piece normally comes out. On most guns, it'll come off. On my Smiths, I can pull this out. On the Tars, and I think the Rossies, it doesn't come undone. Now some of them you can unscrew this to take it off. Again, if you want to do a detailed breakdown, I suggest you get online and do a good search on what specific gun you have, because they all have their little different things to take them down. Some of them will unscrew, some of them won't. Another thing that's commonly missed on a gun is when you push this, they don't clean the interior here. You really want to get this area in here nice and clean and put some oil in there, because that's a moving part. So you want to keep it oiled. There's also a spring in there that makes this pop back. So you want to make sure there's oil in there, and I usually put oil here and then press it a few times and hold it down. And again, this cylinder will spin, so you want to keep that clean and oiled on the inside. So that, and again, these guns, and I've already cleaned this gun, but I just figured I would take this off and show you. So I'll put a little oil down here, take a Q-tip, really polish back and forth. If you just shove a Q-tip in and out, you're going to get a little bit of dirt, but if you scrub it and put pressure on all different angles as you're going back and forth, you're going to get a much better clean, and you're going to get a lot more stuff that you would have missed if you just slid it in and out. Because I've seen people clean guns and they'll go, okay, it's clean, and they'll go in and out once. I want to put pressure on all walls. So when I'm pushing this Q-tip in here, I'm pushing up, I'm pushing all at a 360 out to put pressure to clean the inside of this little tube and tunnel here. And again, same thing with this little, where the screw goes. I want to maybe put a little oil in there, put a little pipe cleaner, and kind of go around in a circle in there and make sure I get that nice and clean, because that's where that screw's at, and you can tell that's a little dirty. So, so I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to squirt my screw, give it a little spin. Screws are very, very rust prone. They don't glue them good, they don't do a good job. Really, really always concentrate on the head of your screw and on the grooves of your screw to make sure they're good and wiped down with oil before you put them back together. So, let me get this Rossi here, or this Tars, whatever the hell it is. Again, I'm going to spray this down, make sure it's got a good clean, which it does. I mean, it's parts that you just can't get to when you pull it apart. Give them a good wipe down, then basically slide it back down in there close it so you know it's closed right, and then put your screw back in. And then what did I say about putting screws back in guns? Always reverse thread. Oh, is that the right screw? Yeah, got a little reflection there. So always reverse screw till you hear a click. There's that click, and now I know it's seated properly, and now I'll forward screw it in, and once I get it kind of tight to where it's not going to back out, I'll open my cylinder and make sure my cylinder comes out easy. Now this cylinder is sticking a little bit. Notice how it's not falling freely? It's kind of sticking. So I'm going to reverse that out a little bit. And now it should fall. Actually, it's not falling that much better, so I'm not that concerned about that screw. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that back up. Now some screws you can tighten very tight and the cylinder won't even open. I just tightened that up really good and it works the same way as it did before. But I've seen some of these over tightened, and when you push the cylinder out, you can't even push it out. You feel that screw grinding. So then you know you have it too tight. And a lot of manufacturers will put a little light tight in there so they can screw it in lightly. It depends on the gun. The better made guns, you put it in tight, it only goes down so far, and all that is a little pin. That screw is a little pin that goes. So where this screw goes, if this was a screw, that screw just goes in between here. So as this rolls in and out, that's what your screw is holding this so it doesn't back out. So that little groove right there is, so this actually is a spring that will come in and out. I'll go ahead and take that out because I'll clean that. But this right here, when I screw that screw in, I'm screwing it right in there and it goes in that groove. So as this opens and closes, this is what your groove looks like. So, and again, on this, I'm going to, for a normal cleaning on a, because I've taken this out and I have parts here, on a normal cleaning, I'm going to wipe the outside down real good. Very limited moving parts. When I pull this trigger on the interior, same thing is happening that was happening on this gun. So I'm pulling this trigger, I know it works. That's double action. That's single action. I'm going to go ahead and single this and get really, when I'm spraying this gun down, I'm getting all in the trigger well, wherever my finger, anywhere your finger can touch, any exposed metal really, you want to clean really well. Wipe down good. When you open this up, I always get a Q-tip, and a lot of people don't clean down in here and get this where the trigger kind of houses, and there'll usually be dirt and stuff in there, so I always put a little oil in there and give it a good squirt. Now people will say you shouldn't put too much oil and this much oil and it'll drip. You know what? I use quite a bit of oil on my guns. I've never had a problem. There's one video about can you use too much oil. They actually dip a gun in a bucket of oil, pull it out and shoot it. Because there's so many whiners out there. Don't use too much oil. You only use a drop. People over lubricate. All this expert advice. And you know what? I'd rather use a little too much oil than not enough. Me personally. I've never had a gun malfunction from too much oil. I have had gun malfunctions because you've shot them so much that the oil's gone and it gets stiff. Mainly in semi-automatics, not so much in revolvers. Revolvers always work. They're dependable. I mean, they're just great little guns. So after I wipe down all the parts that I can see on the outside, I take a patch, I do the barrel real good, and then once I get the barrel done, I do each cylinder on here, counting to make sure I get each one, you know, 2 or 3 times, however many times I want to run it through here. Now I just cleaned this gun 2 days ago, so you would think this patch would be perfectly clean. Well, it's not. Because, you know, you don't get everything on one cleaning, and if you go back and clean a gun, you know, there used to be an old thing I said in one of the videos, you'd clean your gun once, then 2 weeks later you clean it again because the heat and the carbon and all this stuff has a chance to soak out or seep out of the metal. So you'll get a gun that's dirty, that really clean when you put it up, and then 3 months later it'll look like it was fired, and it really wasn't fired because some of the stuff just kind of sleeps out. So anyway, another neglected area on revolvers is people don't clean this little track here where this little pin goes. This goes in this little track, and that needs to be oiled and cleaned. Remember, oil this, oil your ejector, oil that tube, oil each tube. If you don't take this wheel off, because it squirts like right here, is the part that moves. I'll put a little bit of oil right there and put a little squirt, and then I'll close it and I'll open it, and I'll close it and I'll open it, and that'll get some oil down in that area. So if you don't want to pull this off, you don't want to do anything, you just want to do this, that's basically how you clean it. I think you should always pull at least the grips off. Pulling the grips off, you don't have springs and stuff flying. You can take the grips off and wipe it down, you'll be fine. But when you start pulling plates off and you start having things flying out, that's when you get issues. Most of your moving parts are under the plate. And if you take these plates off on and off too much, they tend to get loose. So most manufacturers will tell you not to take this off. And I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't, but if I buy a used gun that I don't know how much it's neglected and whether it's been kept underwater or it's been really trashed and dropped in some crappy sandy water and they've wiped it down and it looked clean on the outside, I always take this plate off to make sure it's clean on the inside. If this was really dirty and bad, I would squirt all this out, make sure there's no moving parts, and then I have my air compressor and just hose it. If you have a can of air, you can do it with a can of air that you clean out your little computer, and just squirt some air in there, and that will blow out any debris you can't see behind the parts. So that's always good if you got a stiff trigger or you're getting some grit or something, to use some sort of compressed air and spray it down with oil and then spray that compressed air in there, and that will blow out the oil and scatter any junk, debris, and steam that you can't necessarily get to. And then you put your parts back together and you put the gun together. So revolvers are not that big of a deal to clean. Like I said, most people never pull that cylinder off. I like to take that one screw off and slide my cylinder out and do a good cleaning on the internal in that hole there that houses this little spinning thing, because I don't want rust and dirt and crap to get in there on, I think this is called the yoke. Another thing about revolvers is you don't want to do what they do on TV by doing that and closing it. This yoke right here is kind of the sensitive part. It looks pretty strong and it looks like it doesn't have that much weight, but over time, if this is dropped and you bounce this gun back and forth like this, it puts little tweaks on this yoke here, and it's not good for the gun. So you don't want to slam this gun open, and you don't want to flip it closed. When you open a cylinder, you should always put one finger on this side and one on that side, so you have good control on opening and closing. Opening and closing. It should never be a snap. That's just not the way you do it. You want to have it on both sides, like so, and open and close, and then you lock it in. So hopefully that helps on cleaning a revolver. I mean, there's not a whole bunch to them. Again, if this plate was on here, I would always squirt a little oil up in here and then wipe, and that will get those pieces kind of washed out good. I know where most of my parts go. I'm a little confused where this pin went, and I'm a little confused. I think this is just set up like so, but I'm not sure. So I need to look that up before I put this one back together. So I won't put these screws back in, but when I do, I'll reverse them. I'll make sure I get that reverse click to make sure they're seated properly before I start screwing them in. Never drop a screw in and just start twisting until it clicks, because that's how you get cross thread and you mess up. And these little bitty screws are pretty sensitive. So I have 3 screws out of this gun, and I have 2 springs and 2 pieces here that I need to figure out what the hell's going on, and then I'll put this back together. Not the end of the world. I mean, to me, it's kind of, you know, I like kind of tinkering with things like this, so it's not that big of a deal. And you know what? I'll forget it because I'm sure I've done this before. And you know what? When you got so many guns and you're working on so many different guns, it's hard to remember the little specialties of each gun. This has a little burnt powder on the inside here, and you see me wiping that off, and that's all going to be gone, and that'll be nice and smooth. But all right, let me end that there on cleaning a revolver. Hopefully that helps. I always think you should have to take your grips off every time you shoot, but anytime, once a year, I like to go through my gun and take the grip off and wipe underneath that grip, make sure I don't have a little rust, kind of like it was on here, kind of getting on there. And these grips sit on there all the time, so I just want to take the grips off, give the grips a good wipe down, and put them down in there. Now, the grip screws, again, I can't stress enough, those damn screws will rust more and more when you take those grips off if you don't take those screws out and give it a good cleaning here and a good cleaning there. Now, on screws that are exposed, see them on the grip, if you notice, the other side of this grip does not have a grip screw. It's kind of internal. It doesn't have the female nut. So your screws over here, and it just goes in and stops on the inside. I want to make sure and get a Q-tip or something in there with oil, because this is where my screw goes. So I want to make sure that's nice and clean and oiled where the screw grooves are going to go into it. On most of your revolvers, this one doesn't have it either. A lot of your Smiths, especially your wooden grips, you screw in here, and on the other side it's got a little gap, a little brass screw that you see the screw coming out on the other side. And a lot of people neglect that, and those will rust. Really clean both sides of that screw. This screw goes here and it doesn't come out here, so I can't show you what I'm talking about. But if you got a revolver, you can look at it and see if you can tell. Most revolvers, you can see the other side where the screw comes out. So this is a, hell, I don't even know what the hell these guns are. Oh, I think they're both Tauruses, I don't know. This is a Taurus, this is a Rossi. So, that's cleaning a revolver. Most of them are the same, most of them are pretty simple. There's usually only removing that cylinder, and pretty easy to clean, pretty simple to operate. I got a lot of questions on whether or not they're good. Look, you can make it about a sexist and buy into that liberal bullshit about sexist and men and women are equal stuff, but look, when you got a gun that's simple, and I can give this to a person, and this has a hammer, so it makes it even more complicated, but with this one with an internal hammer, there's nothing there. All I have to do is pull this gun out and squeeze the trigger and it's shooting. And I gotta squeeze it 5 times and it's shooting 5 times. And that's it. I don't have to worry about sliding. Most women I see want little guns. They want the little automatics because they think it's newer, it's cooler, everybody tells them how great it is. And then they have a problem because it's so small of racking that round. And they only get maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 more bullets. I mean, this is a 5-shot. If I have a little short, mini, small 9mm, I may only get 6, 7, 8 shots. I mean, you know, there's an old theory, if you can't kill them in 5, you're not going to kill them in 10. I mean, your first few rounds have got to be able to stop the person or get hits on target. So this is considered not an offensive gun, it's a defensive gun. It's for an oh shit moment. It's when you don't have time to plan. If I had time to plan, I'd get my biggest rifle with my biggest powerful bullet, I'd wait for you and I'd shoot you with my biggest rifle, my biggest bullet, and 1 round would stop you and put you down. You're done. But these are defensive guns. You carry them, they're small, and they're only to keep somebody off you to buy you time. Remember, you use a pistol to fight to get to your rifle. So these pistols are defensive. It's not made, you can't have both things. You can't have the big stopping power of a rifle with a pistol. You got shorter barrel, lighter pressures, all kind of things. Lighter bullets, the heavier the bullet, the more the kick. The smaller the gun, the bigger the bullet, the more the kick. Rifles have less kick and they can shoot bigger bullets because they're absorbing so much more of the energy of pushing that bullet out of there. So, revolvers are simple. I highly recommend them. I like the light ones and I like the ones with the chins closed trigger where there's no issues. Alright, so we'll end that there and let me put this bad boy back together. People be like, he's just going to throw that gun away. It's ruined. Ah, you big idiot. We'll end that there.